Everybody, thank you for joining me today. First of all, I wanted to say a special thank you to all Manitobans who sadly had to miss or cancel or adapt their traditional Easter and Passover celebrations this weekend, but who did it for the right reasons. I say thank you to you for making sure you're doing your part to keep all of us safer. We're going to flatten this COVID curve, so thank you for staying home. Thank you for keeping your family safe. Thank you for keeping your neighbors safe. Thank you for keeping us all safe. I want to take this time as well to acknowledge partners all over the province in our communities, community leaders who are stepping up and helping other Manitobans during this time of need. There are so many examples. I'll just share one with you here, a couple with you. Oakland-Wawanesa Fire Department and other municipal fire departments are helping celebrate the birthdays of children in their communities. Thank you for doing that. Maxim Truck and Trailer over in Brandon handed out free lunches to truck drivers last week. The reality of most of the truck stops being shut down is that this is a real tough time for a lot of our truckers. So thank you for doing that because they are delivering necessary supply. In normal times, Manitoba's small businesses and their employees give us the resources we need through their tax dollars to support health care. But right now, they're struggling. They're facing pressures in ways we have never seen before because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of these businesses have been forced to scale back their operations. Some of them have been forced to lay off employees or reduce hours or even close their doors for the time being. But they are resilient. They are the backbone of our economy. And this government is thinking of them every day. And we want to position our small businesses in a way that allows them to bounce back from this economic crisis. Les petites et moyennes entreprises sont les colonnes vertébrées de notre économie. Et nous pensons à vous. Nous voulons vous positionner de manière à pouvoir rebondir après cette crise économique. Last week, Statistics Canada reported that Manitoba, along with every other province, had our worst month-over-month job losses in modern history. 23,000 Manitobans lost their jobs. At least that many saw a loss in their incomes because of reduced hours. Next month it will be worse. And what are we going to do about it? Well, the pandemic impact is real. And focusing on recovery is real too, and that is what we're going to do. Not only are we focusing on our physical health, we must also focus on our economic health as well. Now, the federal and provincial governments have been partnering, and I would say the relationship among all governments in Canada has been strengthened as a consequence of the necessities presented to us by this pandemic. The federal government has introduced several programs, and late last week they clarified details on 2 programs that we believe can be of special benefit to Manitoba small businesses and their employees: the Wage Subsidy Program and the Canada Emergency Business Account Program. Now, these programs, we understand, will be ready for application fairly soon. We have urged on a call with the Prime Minister late last week, echoed by other premiers, that these programs should be ready sooner rather than later, and we would encourage the turnaround time to be shorter rather than longer, because these programs are both designed to get funds to small businesses and their employees at a time when they need that money, and that is now. Because these 2 programs, although they don't answer everyone's set of unique circumstances, answer most of the concerns of small businesses and their employees, we believe they can serve as bridges to recovery for Manitoba and for the nation as well. But here in Manitoba, it is especially crucial because we are, more than most provinces, very, very reliant on our small and medium enterprises in our economy. It is crucial that we help our small business community, our nonprofits, our charitable organizations, to get the government supports and the resources that they need to weather this storm as soon as possible. We want to put Manitoba and Manitobans in a position where they can get back to providing the services and creating the jobs as soon as possible. Il est essentiel que nous aidions notre communauté des entreprises à tirer parti des soutiens, des ressources et des opportunités du gouvernement. Nous voulons vous mettre dans une position où vous pouvez recommencer à fournir des services et à créer des emplois qui est possible. So today, I'm here to announce that the Manitoba government will be partnering in support of the federal government in the promotion of these programs here in Manitoba through outreach, through intake, through question and answer facilitation. In addition, by coordinating and working with professional groups, with business associations, in an effort to coordinate the registration, even going so far as to assist in the preparation of the applications themselves. And we do this all to get ready to reopen, to get ready to rehire, to get ready to rebound, to get ready for recovery as part of our Manitoba Protection Plan. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to the reporters online, you will have a primary question and one follow-up question. From the Winnipeg Sun, Scott.
So, Premier, Scott Billick here from Winnipeg Sun. You've been a bit muffled on the call, so just what exactly is the province doing here? If you can just maybe repeat that again.
Sure, Scott. What we're announcing today is the result of a tender that we organized last week, which was awarded, I believe, on Thursday, which will hire, as it turns out, the winner of the tender was a Manitoba-based company, to do the outreach necessary to inform all Manitoba businesses of the availability of two main programs that the federal government is offering to coordinate a loan application, first of all, for up to $40,000, and secondarily, a wage subsidy program for companies which have seen a revenue loss of 30%. Basically, there's some technical details to that. That would allow them to apply for wage subsidy support to the tune of about 75% of their salaries. And in coordinating this, our goal would be to assist Manitobans in applying for these programs, which will support them in getting back on their feet.
Thanks. And just to follow up, how many businesses are affected by this in the province right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it takes, I think, a fair bit of common sense to understand that most businesses are impacted to some degree. Whether they're eligible for the programs or not depends on that degree. And so, generally speaking, if revenues are down year over year by about 30% or more, programs would be eligible for wage subsidy supports. These programs are designed to assist businesses in getting back on their feet and maintaining their payroll while they're suffering the effects of the pandemic. In Manitoba, we have over 60,000 small businesses, and we believe a significant percentage of them are impacted or will be impacted in the coming weeks by the pandemic. And so these programs are particularly important to assist those companies, if they haven't been forced to lay people off yet, to hopefully help them not have to do that. If they have had to lay people off, which we know last week was 23,000 jobs lost in Manitoba, almost all of them in the private sector. If they've had to lay people off, it would be our hope that by getting these supports to those small businesses, they'd be able to begin the process of rehiring staff and getting themselves back ready to recover.
From CBC Radio Canada, Patrick.
Bonjour, M. Pallister. Patrick from Radio Canada, Patrick Foucault. On another issue regarding COVID, are you aware if any penalties or arrests have been made over the weekend related to the public health orders?
I'm not at this time aware of any arrests that have been made. I understand that initially the City of Winnipeg was active in issuing educational materials and some warnings. I'm awaiting the update from the city on that. I'm sure that the mayor will provide that in due course. And on Wednesday of this week, it's our hope that we can have the opposition parties agree to initiatives that will formalize that process for the balance of the province as well.
See, and also on another issue, did you receive any word from Prime Minister Trudeau on your provincial borrowing initiative you proposed a few weeks ago?
Je n'ai pas reçu une réponse de le Premier ministre à ce moment présentement, mais je comprends bien le processus pour l'analyse, évaluation pour le proposal. Il va prendre probablement une semaine, 2 semaines possible. The majority of premiers expressed on the call their support for the proposal. It's our hope that we can have that support recognized by the Prime Minister.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Bart McKee with CBC. Mr. Premier, will Manitoba be extending the public health order that expires tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. I got all choked up thinking about the Prime Minister there, but I'm okay now. Bartley, thank you for that. Dr. Roussin will be making himself available in about an hour or so, and I expect may have some comments on that specific issue. I'll let our health experts perform their role in respect of that issue.
Okay, different question here then. Most provinces have offered insurance premium relief of some form, given the fact there's not a lot of people driving, or people aren't driving as much. Do you believe Manitoba Public Insurance should follow suit?
We've had some preliminary discussions with MPI late last week on several issues that would be in the category of one of them. We know that there have been rebates offered in a variety of provinces who do not have public insurance through their various private sector companies because of the reality that they've had reduced claims, for example. So I wouldn't suggest this is off the table for consideration.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Mr. Premier, Jeff Gill, CTV, will you be announcing any direct support for businesses on top of what the feds have, whether to help with rent or anything like that?
What we're announcing today is pretty significant, Jeff. You're talking about a tender for $4 million of investment. And on the surface, people would say, well, why are you simply tendering to promote a federal program? Well, we're all in this together. It's a federal program which, at this point in time, will need to be promoted so that Manitobans can take full participation in it. And so if you understand that there are literally billions of dollars at stake, you'll understand that investing 1/1000th of that money in promoting and coordinating the program to help Manitobans makes good sense. Rather than duplicating a program or topping it up, actually using the program as it's designed and supporting it is the right way, I think, to demonstrate partnership. And that's what Christian Freeland and I have spoken about, is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to make sure that the programs that are appropriate for people get promoted and used, and that's exactly what Manitoba is going to continue to maximize the opportunities in.
Thank you. And my follow-up, we're seeing things like meat processing plants closing in the U.S. not far from here. Do you have any concerns about food shortages, and is there anything the province can do about it?
At this point in time, I don't, Jeff, but I always have concerns about the potential for COVID to spread in in businesses, industrial, manufacturing, retail, you name it, where people don't follow the proper protocols and practices. And so those discussions have continued to be had by government officials and medical officials with the small business community and its leadership, but they need to be followed. Those practices are essential in making sure that we intercept the spread and delay the spread of COVID.
From the Canadian Press, Kelly.
When it comes to 24/7 In Touch, what is their role in this and how will it work? Will they just be letting businesses know that they should apply, or will they also be providing information?
Both those things, Kelly. Actually, the initial outreach, and there's a strategic session that's going to be happening tomorrow to outline and evaluate even in more detail how we can improve the effectiveness of the outreach. There'll be initial outreach and the opportunity for people to get information, but there'll also be call center activity, not just on out-call, but on in-call responses as well. So if people call in with additional questions, they'll be able to get answers to them. Now, we know that the federal government has not, at this point in time, finalized any details of its formatting or its processing, nor have they outlined any details on promotion of their programs apart from press releases. This isn't a criticism. It's just a reality that the federal government has enormous responsibilities in respect of many different things right now. We want to make sure that these programs, which are really very good potentially in their ability to help Manitobans, that Manitobans know about them, that they are able to access them, and that we can coordinate that effectively by working with our business groups, our various professional associations, our charitable organizations, our nonprofit networks, that all of these organizations, this would include, for example, cultural and charitable organizations, daycares, in addition to the normal small business you might think of in your head right now. So there are tens of thousands of these entities that need to be notified and assisted wherever possible, and this service will allow us to do that and maximize the ability of people to get their employees back to work.
And on a bit of a side note, the federal government announced today that it's providing $50 million to help farmers and food processors cover the costs associated with mandatory quarantine rules for workers coming in from outside the country. Is this enough to help the ag industry? And does Manitoba have any plans for its own action to support the agriculture sector?
Having just learned about the specific program you're talking about, I believe you're talking about the Foreign Workers Assist. We've also had talks here about other possibilities. I know that on the temporary foreign workers issue, not exclusively, but largely this would be of assistance to our apiaries, our vegetable producers, to some degree our nurseries, I understand as well. That's a subset of our ag industry, as you know, which is incredibly diverse. We continue to look for ways to assist and help all our industries, not exclusively the ag industries, who are in any way impacted by this pandemic.
From City News, Stephanie.
Mr. Premier, Stephanie with City News. Just wondering about the projections, when Manitoba might start to see those projections of this COVID-19 pandemic.
I understand that they're coming out this week, Stephanie. If you're referring to the health-related projections, I think you may be. Of course, late last week we got the labor force report, and it showed that Manitoba had the most significant job loss in our history. But it also showed, on the bright side, that we had the least significant job loss of any Canadian province. So it wasn't good news, but I guess it could have been worse. The reality, though, is because Manitoba's COVID impacts have been delayed versus several other provinces, I think it's fair to project that those labor numbers will get worse in the coming month, not better. And this is part of the motivation for why we say it's very urgent to get these supports out to our small businesses, to our employers in the province, because we want to get people back to work as quickly as we can. For our small business to be able to rebound, it is really important that they have their people lined up and that they're ready to go as we turn towards recovery in Manitoba. And so we're planning for that, and these programs will be a significant part of how we get ready to rebound.
And then do you know how many Manitoba nonprofits will be eligible for these support programs?
Well, all nonprofits will be eligible if they can demonstrate a loss of revenue of 30%, or there are some technical aspects to that, as I mentioned earlier. They can spread it out over a period of time. It doesn't have to be month over month. The feds have modified their rules several times, but we think that they've got pretty close to what they're going to be now as of the end of last week. So I would mention as well that Manitoba has a number of seasonal enterprises, and that under the rules now, they would be able to apply even though they don't normally operate in January, February, and March. So for example, BDI or Skinner's, other seasonal enterprises, if they see losses in their revenue coming up this coming month, they too would be able to apply for these programs, and this would assist them in being able to, hopefully hire as many people as they normally do, or at least to support them through the valley that we know is coming as a consequence of the pandemic and our necessary response to it.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Larry.
Mr. Premier, Larry Cush of the Winnipeg Free Press. Alberta and Ontario have both ordered hundreds of thousands of test kits from a Canadian firm that promises COVID results in less than an hour. I'm wondering if this is on Manitoba's radar, or have you considered any kind of order of quick test kits for COVID?
Larry, it's a fair question, and I don't have the answer for you, and I apologize for that. I know that we've been very much focused on the protective equipment piece on procurement. That's been naturally our top priority and has been for some weeks. And we're not alone in that, of course. Everybody in the Western world is trying to get more protective equipment. I wanted to say, though, we'll find out for you and get back to you on that, Larry. But I wanted to say also a special thank you to our small businesses in Manitoba that have responded so enthusiastically in respect of our ask for help in producing more of our necessary equipment and other things here in Manitoba. Their response has just been really, really heartwarming, and I just want to say a special thank you to them.
As a follow-up, because of the financial fallout from the pandemic, do you foresee a reduced civil service in the near future, or do you see that maintaining current staffing levels?
Well, we're going to have those discussions. I'll have more to say on this tomorrow. There has been some preliminary exchange of views on that issue. I think you're seeing, obviously, that the private sector is right across the country, from coast to coast to coast. The private sector is where the hurt is being felt most severely. You saw that with the results last week. You had over 95% of job loss was private sector. And that's the case not just in Manitoba, but across much of the country. We're all in this together, so we're going to have a look at how we respond, not just in sympathy to the private sector, but more than that, to make sure that we have the resources for the front lines of our public sector. And right now we're looking at tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of additional investment in just things like protective equipment and so on. The money, there's no tree behind the legislature here that prints out money. We're not in that position, so we'll be looking for partnership and support from all. Some are directly impacted, others may be indirectly impacted as well.
From Global, Brittany.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. Brittany from Global News. I know a lot of small businesses here in the province have been waiting for some sort of provincial announcement saying that they don't fit into any of these federal announcements for small businesses, that they're falling through the cracks. What do you say to those businesses that we're hearing from that say they need provincial help?
Yeah, I think that's a fair consideration. There are the vast majority of our small businesses would fit into the new revised criteria for the federal government program, which maybe wasn't the case, Brittany, before Manitoba and others lobbied to have those programs changed. You'll remember just 10 days ago, the federal government's wage subsidy program was capped at 10% of the wage, which would have meant virtually no one, in my estimation, across Canada would have used the program, and now it's 75%. And that is a good change, and that will allow far more businesses, small businesses, to be able to get support than would have been the case just a week and a half ago. And there are other changes that the feds have agreed to make the program work. This is important because what we don't need is 10 different programs competing with each other, overlapping with each other, and confusing Canadians. That won't help us get the result we need, which is support for small businesses in our country. That's why we're offering to promote and partner with the federal government in the promotion of their program, because we believe it's a better program. And if there are still Manitoba businesses or individuals that have payrolls, for example, if you have a payroll of $50,000 or higher, you're eligible for support, whether you're a business, a nonprofit, a charitable organization. But if you have under that, you may be in a position where you're not getting support. So we have lots of things on the table right now, lots of considerations, and that is one of them. There's no doubt.
We spoke with you at last week's press conference on Thursday. You announced enforcement measures, changes that will be coming into effect after legislation is passed, but also ones that were already able to be taken into effect through provincial health inspectors and bylaw enforcement. What did you hear from your team over the weekend about tickets, warnings, and how people were doing?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm waiting for the city summary. I understand there were officials out there working, community ambassadors, whatever the phrase is, out there that were giving warnings and were endeavoring to help people comply more effectively with the rules and regulations that are there to protect all of us. And on Wednesday, we'll be able to see, with the support of the opposition parties, a province-wide consistency to the oversight and the necessary fines and policing that has to sadly has to be undertaken because some people just don't seem to get it. I would say again, most people do, and the vast majority of Manitobans have been great, and I think it's important to say that because it's just a few people on the edge of common sense that seem to require these penalties. I'll look forward. I'm sure the mayor will be releasing the updates from this weekend's activity so that you'll be able to have a look at those.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. This is Drew Mason of Brandon Sun. Mr. Premier, on the announcement today, is Manitoba the only province taking this kind of action to help promote the federal government's program, or are there others as well?
We're the first. That I doubt seriously will be the last. At this point in time, of course, the premiers are well aware of the benefits of these programs. Some have, I understand, taken some measures to promote with business organizations and so on. We feel that we have to go the extra mile here and get the word out to the individual small businesses, some of whom may not be members of local chambers of commerce or the Canadian Federation of Independent Business for that matter. So we met with those organizations earlier and was agreed that we need to coordinate our approach so that we get to everybody. And I would thank the business organizations for their input on that as well. And I would also say it's very important that we also get the word out to all our nonprofits and our charities too, because they're hurting as well through this time with reduced donations and reduced support, naturally being a consequence of COVID right now. And so the better we can coordinate this, we feel the better result for Manitobans and the more jobs we'll create and the better we'll be ready to recover when the time comes to at some point in the future, loosen the restrictions and allow businesses to get back on their feet again.
And just to follow up, but with the program that was announced today, what's the role of local chambers of commerce in helping get this info out?
Well, the role is to make sure that they're directing any questions that their members may have through to a coordinating entity, which is what we're establishing. It's asking an awful lot of local chambers like the Brandon Chamber or Portage Winnipeg Chamber to field thousands of calls from their members. They're doing a lot of that work now, and thank you to them for doing it. But in terms of a comprehensive way to get questions answered that can lead to an application and then to assist with actually getting the paperwork done, we need a centralized agency to do that, and that's what we're establishing here in Manitoba with the support of our business and professional associations.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good afternoon, Diana from 680 CJOB. Mr. Premier, we heard a tip that up to 60 people working at MPI have been laid off. I'm wondering if there's any truth to that or if there have been any other layoffs at Crown Corporation so far.
Well, I can't speak to the specifics of MPI. I know there was a meeting with MPI held late last week. I know there's comprehensive strategies to work on labor force management that are being developed as we speak, and they'll move forward. I understand that in terms of the last month's labor stats, that over 95% of the job loss was in the private sector, and that the less than 5% in the public sector was limited to layoffs at Manitoba liquor and lotteries, principally at casinos. Beyond that, there's going to have to be a partnership, and there's going to have to be some solidarity in respect of how we work with our labor force. Because clearly the front line's the priority right now, and it's going to stay that way for some months, it looks like.
And as a follow-up, something we get asked fairly often from people is whether or not the province is doing anything further for rent help. I know you've already announced a freeze on rent increases for tenants. Is any further support coming for tenants or for landlords?
The measures we've taken thus far have earned us some pretty high praise from both tenants and landlords. They give stability to people who are in a otherwise precarious situation who are renting. They also, I think, are fair to the landlords who absorb, of course, the costs in the meantime while rents are being delayed, while expenses continue to mount. So we've achieved, I think, a reasonable balance of supports there, also limiting the possibility of eviction to those who are engaging in criminal activity. But, again, we don't know the duration of this thing, and as I said earlier, we're in uncharted waters. This is not a pandemic that has precedent, and so we're continuing to make sure that we're focused on protecting our most vulnerable citizens. Right now, that means focusing really significantly to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars on bolstering our healthcare system. So we're ready, so we're able to take care of those. Not only those, I would mention again, who are served by the front line in respect to the pandemic itself, but all those other vulnerable Manitobans who are dealing with illnesses and injuries right now, they have to be looked after too. So I say again, a sincere thank you to our frontline workers, to the people who, not only the people who nurse, not only our medical professionals and our technicians, but also the people who keep the hospitals clean, the people who prepare the meals, the people who make the beds, the people who are there on a daily basis because they love to care, and they're demonstrating that in this COVID crisis. Thank you to them.
From CTV National News, Jill.
Hello, Premier Pallister. Last week, there seemed to be some concern about PPE, and I know you mentioned it in this press conference, but even your health official said we only got a fraction of what of the federal shipment that was available last week. What are the concerns today and going forward?
It's not an emergency, Jill, but you know me, and I think I'd probably be in that category most Manitobans right now. I recognize that it's wise to be prepared. So we are concerned that we procure even more protective gear and protective equipment and other relevant supplies that are necessary to offer security and confidence to people who need to use our healthcare facilities. And the fact of the matter is we launched that outreach some weeks ago in support of, not in distrust of, the federal joint procurement exercise, which we were the first province to sign on to. But we recognize the urgency of having this equipment there to protect our frontline people and to protect those who they care for as well.
Are those ongoing discussions then with the federal government too? I know we're trying to do what we can in our own province, but the bulk of it is coming from the feds. Are those conversations happening to ensure Manitoba is getting its portion as needed?
Those conversations are happening on a daily basis, and they continue. But in the absence of any significant commitments, in addition to those already made by the federal government, we are acting as I believe we must, as the operators and managers of the healthcare system in our province, consistently in a focused manner to procure other additional protective equipment and other materials. And we've been really bolstered by the response of Manitoba companies and Manitoba individuals as well in terms of that effort. And I would mention also a thank you to them, and also say that we are not just going after the reactive projects of getting equipment and materials now, we're also keeping our eye on a cure. And so I say thank you to those who are looking diligently for a vaccination, for example, and developing other equipment options that we can pursue in the midterm, in addition to those we are already working to get here in Manitoba. Just say thank you to all of you again. I hope you enjoyed the Easter and Passover holiday in the appropriate way and as much as was possible given the circumstances. And I would say again to Manitobans, remember good hand hygiene, remember to take preventative measures, and I won't get tired of saying this because I believe the fundamentals matter in life and in COVID crises like this one. Remember that you have to wash your hands for at least 15 seconds with soap and warm water. Dry your hands thoroughly. Use an alcohol-based hand cleaner if your hands are not visibly dirty. And remember to clean your hands after coughing or sneezing, as I just did during this press conference. Remember that you need to clean your hands when you're caring for someone who's ill, before, during, and after you prepare food, and before eating, of course. Do these things. Remember to do these things. Do them all the time. And make sure you stay safe. Thank you.